Today, the Matt Walsh Show, the DNC begins in a boarded-up Chicago because whenever Democrats get together, local businesses have to treat the occasion like a Category 5 hurricane. What does that tell you? Meanwhile, Planned Parenthood will be on the scene in an RV giving out free abortions and vasectomies. We'll discuss that. Also, Kamala starts going off script for the first time since she stole the nomination, and it does not go well. Several media outlets were leaked hacked emails from the Trump campaign. They have not published any of them. Are they showing restraint because they're responsible, honest journalists, or is there another reason? And a group of anti-racist leftists called the police on me while we were filming my new movie, Am I Racist? We now have the police reports, and they are even funnier than you'd expect them to be. All of that and more today on The Matt Walsh Show. Big tech companies don't just want your money. They want to know everything about you. Data brokers make a living compiling detailed profiles of your online activity and selling them to marketers and other corporate interests that want to control you with targeted ads. They're not selling a product, they're selling you. But you don't have to let them. Like me, you can keep your browsing history completely private with ExpressVPN. One of the easiest ways for data brokers to track you is through your device's unique IP address, which also reveals information about your location. But ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making it extremely difficult for data brokers to monitor, track, and monetize your private online activity. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data, keeping your data safe from hackers when you're on public Wi-Fi. Sounds complicated, but one of the reasons I love ExpressVPN is that it's so easy to use. All you got to do is fire up the app, click one button to get connected, and it's that simple. Plus, it works on all my family's devices, phones, laptops, tablets, and more. I'm a private guy. I don't like the idea of people, tracking my every move online, and I'm guessing you probably feel the same way. So protect your online privacy today by visiting expressvpn.com/Walsh. That's expressvpn.com/Walsh, and you can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/Walsh. The National Guard is on standby in Chicago. Businesses in the city have boarded up their windows as if a Category 5 hurricane is about to make landfall. Massive fences have gone up in residents' front yards on the west side as the police brace for riots. And you know what all that means. Today is day one of the Democratic National Convention. Now, under normal circumstances, the start of a nominating convention creates a political tailwind for a presidential candidate. There's supposed to be some enthusiasm about the party's platform going into the convention because they control the messaging. And in the case of the Kamala Harris campaign, the messaging is about as tightly controlled as it can possibly be. She hasn't given an unscripted interview since she became her party's presumptive nominee nearly a month ago. She's communicating to the public almost exclusively through rehearsed sound bites. But Harris is not experiencing any political tailwinds at the moment. In fact, the honeymoon period for her candidacy appears to be pretty much over, just in time for the beginning of the DNC. All it took was for Kamala Harris to describe one piece of information about what she plans to do if she's elected. Just a single policy proposal has tanked her momentum so dramatically that even the corporate press, which has done everything it can to boost her candidacy up to this point, of course, has started to turn on her. I'm talking about Kamala Harris's proposal to end what she calls price gouging, which she unveiled in her a speech in North Carolina on Friday, except the rollout didn't go quite as planned. Watch.
And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
Well, that inspires a lot of confidence. She wants to fight price gouging, but she can't even pronounce the word gouging. She wants to assume enormous, unprecedented, and unilateral control over some of the most important sectors of the economy, including the grocery industry. And she can't tell the difference between the words gouging and gauging. In her speech, Harris didn't offer any specifics about what constitutes an acceptable price and what is unacceptable. She didn't explain how her administration can override the laws of supply and demand without destroying the economy. Nor did she explain why this new proposal is even necessary in the first place. I mean, didn't Kamala Harris cast the tie-breaking vote in the Senate to secure the passage of the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which authorized nearly $1 trillion in government spending? Wasn't that 2 years ago? Like, what happened to that? I thought we reduced inflation. She passed the law. Now, did that law perhaps increase inflation after all, as conservatives said that it would? Kamala Harris didn't answer any of those questions on Friday. Instead, she complained about inflation as if her administration hasn't been running the country for the past 4 years.
As president, I will take on the high costs that matter most to most Americans, like the cost of food. We all know that prices went up during the pandemic when the supply chains shut down and failed. But our supply chains have now improved, and prices are still too high. A loaf of bread costs 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%.
I mean, it's pretty incredible. Imagine going to your employer and asking for a promotion. And in order to explain why you should get a promotion, you list all of the problems that you have created in your workplace to then say that you need to be promoted so you can fix it. I broke it, so I alone can fix it. Is that like that's one argument, I guess. So all the Trump campaign has to do is air that clip that you just saw in every battleground state. They don't need to make a single edit. Kamala Harris is admitting that her administration was a failure. And now she wants even more power to control the economy. She knows she can't call for more legislation because that already failed. She can't call for reducing government spending and money printing because her constituents demand free stuff, free student loans, free healthcare, subsidized rent, subsidized home purchases, and so on. So she's reduced to demanding price controls, which have failed in every country that they've been attempted, including this one. Even by the standards of the left-wing corporate media, this is all like a bit too much. They can tolerate a candidate who doesn't give interviews, who bails out violent rioters, who wants to abolish ICE and get rid of private healthcare. All of that is fine with them. But Soviet-style price controls are so obviously destructive that even the most partisan Democrat-aligned outlets can't tolerate it. It's also pretty on the nose since Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, is an open admirer of Mao's, who's taken dozens of trips to China, which is, by the way, speaking of weird, like, do you know any normal person who's gone to China dozens of times? Also, allegedly, this is a guy that doesn't even own anything. He has no property that he owns. He has no net worth. He's like basically broke, and yet he's taking dozens of trips to China, whatever. It looks a lot like Democrats now want to import Chinese-style communism, which crossed a line even for CNN. Watch.
You know, it's very hard to pin down what this would actually mean. If you look at the legislation that, as I mentioned, is already in the Senate, led by Senate Warren and Senator Bob Casey and a slew of others, the particular way that this is written, which is likely to be the template for any proposal that Harris would eventually embrace, is especially bad in that it just bans excessive prices, grossly excessive prices, grossly excessive profit margins, and says that the Federal Trade Commission can use any metric it deems appropriate to decide what that would mean. Which basically says, like, it's not going to be markets, it's not going to be supply and demand that's determining how much your grocery store charges you for milk or for eggs. It's going to be some bureaucrat in DC. But it also would be very bad for markets. We've seen this kind of thing tried in lots of other countries before: Venezuela, Argentina, the Soviet Union, et cetera. It leads to shortages. It leads to black markets. Plenty of uncertainty. And beyond that, the specific way this bill is written might actually increase prices.
Yeah, we can't have the grossly excessive profit margins. How do you draw the line there? Like, what counts as a grossly excessive profit margin? Well, the ones that are gross. The gross ones. How do you know if they're gross? Well, because they're gross. If it's a profit margin that makes you go, ew, gross, then that's a grossly excessive one. That's the measure the government's going to use for this. Now, the CNN analyst in that clip, Catherine Rampell, is also wrote a column for the Washington Post with this headline, quote, "When your opponent calls you communist, maybe don't propose price controls." The op-ed continues, "It's hard to exaggerate how bad Kamala Harris's price gouging proposal is. It is, in all but name, a sweeping set of government-enforced price controls across every industry, not only food. Supply and demand would no longer determine prices or profit levels. Far off Washington bureaucrats would. At best, this would lead to shortages, black markets, and hoarding. Yes, at best. That's the best case scenario. It's bad enough for Kamala Harris that an op-ed like this would be published in the Washington Post, but it gets worse because the paper's editorial board came out the next day and endorsed the same op-ed, quote, "The Times demand serious economic ideas. Harris's supplies gimmicks." That's the editorial board's headline. And they went on to point out that the grocery industry is a notoriously low-margin business with profit margins typically hovering around 2%. The paper added, quote, "Whether the Harris proposal wins over voters remains to be seen, but if sound economic analysis still matters, it won't." Now, if you're cynical or just observant, you might point out that Jeff Bezos, who owns the Washington Post, also owns Whole Foods. So, of course, he wouldn't want price controls on groceries. But pretty much everywhere you looked in left-wing media, you saw basically the same headline. Newsweek, for example, ran this article, quote, "Kamala Harris's grocery price gouging plan is riddled with problems, experts say." CNN, meanwhile, push alerted this story to the millions of people who read its website, quote, "Harris's plan to stop price gouging could create more problems than it solves." Various CNN guests also criticized Harris's plan to give new home buyers $25,000 because the plan will obviously just cause the prices of homes to increase for everybody. That's all that will happen. Watch.
Look, when it comes to the 25K, I mean, you just added $25,000 into every price onto every home price in the country. Because if you're giving that away essentially for free, people will add it into the price.
Now, one way to read all of this coverage is that the corporate press is trying to help the Kamala Harris campaign. They know the campaign is making a huge and potentially fatal unforced error, and they're trying to push them into moderating the message. On the Sunday shows, there were some signs that the message maybe was received. Andy Bashir, a Harris campaign surrogate, suggested that Kamala Harris just wants to break up monopolies, even though we already have laws against that. But on the other hand, there are many more signs that Democrats genuinely aren't concerned with appearing moderate anymore. They simply can't help themselves. Like normally the plan for Democrats has been to appear normal during the election year and then enact their actual agenda once they're in office. But we're kind of skipping that step this year and heading directly into complete unhinged insanity. The Venezuelan-style price controls are just one component of that. Here's another one. Planned Parenthood has announced that it'll be posted just blocks outside the convention center in Chicago in an RV, giving out free abortions and free vasectomies. And there was so much demand for the vasectomies that a waiting list began almost immediately. The abortions are available Monday and Tuesday, and the vasectomies are only available on Monday. That's the way that they're breaking this down. And just to underscore the communist theme of the new Democratic Party, Planned Parenthood says that the services will be provided, quote, on a sliding fee scale, pay what you can and get the health care you need. They say that people from all over the country have signed up to travel to Chicago in order to kill their children in this child-killing bus or get a vasectomy. And that's not hard to believe based on what's happening outside the convention site. Last night, activists dressed as abortion pills began to demonstrate. They showed up in costumes to look like abortion pills. And here's what that looks like. Okay. And I don't even know if we can get the screenshot up, but I'm pretty sure that right in front of these women dressed as abortion pills, there's a big sign that says Trump and J.D. Vance are weird. So just the irony irony is dead, basically. You've got a march, you got rainbow flags, people dressed as abortion pills, and Trump and J.D. Vance are weird. They're also saying, F the courts, F the state, you can't make us procreate, is what they're chanting. Now, as I'm constantly needing to remind these people, you should understand that nobody is trying to force you to procreate. No one would want to force that. Even if we could force you to procreate, we wouldn't. The issue is that once you have conceived a child, procreation has already occurred. So it's too late at that point to not procreate. You already have. The question is whether it's okay to murder your own offspring because you're sad about the fact that you procreated. And the answer is no, it's not okay. That's our point. But these activists, like so many activists on the left, refuse to be told no. They can't accept it. They want you to know that nothing is more important to them than the ability to kill their own children, not the judicial system or even the country itself, hence the chant. Now, 20 years ago, Democratic Party leaders would have disavowed this kind of language. They tell you that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, is what they used to say, because that's the slogan that tested well in focus groups at the time. They'd balk at the idea of an abortion bus at their convention. But this year, Democrats are going to nominate Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who bragged that he's to the left of Nancy Pelosi on abortion. Watch.
And my record is so pro-choice, Nancy Pelosi asked me if I should tone it down. I stand with Planned Parenthood, and we won.
So Tim Walz stands with Planned Parenthood so much that Nancy Pelosi told him to tone it down. Now, what does that look like in practice? Well, we're seeing it right now in D.C., or at the DNC, and in D.C. We've also seen it from how Walz has governed Minnesota. Quoting from the National Review, quote, data from the Minnesota Department of Health indicated that since Governor Walz was inaugurated in 2019, 8 babies survived abortion attempts in Minnesota. On 5 occasions, no measures were taken to preserve life. On 3 occasions, only comfort care was provided. Tragically, all of these babies died. Instead of strengthening protections for these children, SF 2995, a bill Walz signed last year, repealed the Born Alive Infant Protection Act, which was intended to provide legal protection for infants who survived abortion. So just to reiterate, these are infant children delivered, born outside the womb, who are either killed or left to die, and leaving them to die is the same thing as killing them. Now, these kinds of positions used to be disqualifying, even for Democrats. They're not disqualifying anymore, which is why you're seeing abortion buses showing up at the DNC. It's why you're seeing activists call for the destruction of the United States because they want to kill their children. It's also why a group called Americans for Contraception will erect an 18-foot inflatable IUD called Frida Womb outside the convention, which you can see right here. And this will be the unofficial mascot of the DNC. I mean, they're literally making an idol out of birth control. It is the modern Democrat version of the golden calf right outside the convention hall. It's possible these activist groups are sending abortion/sterilization buses and IUD monuments to the convention because they think most voters are on their side. You know, we're always told that abortion and reproductive rights, quote unquote, euphemism there, are a liability for Republicans. Supposedly these issues are an electoral slam dunk for Democrats, especially after the Dobbs decision. But the reality is that most Americans still think that it's freakish and bizarre to worship birth control like some kind of pagan deity. And very few Americans think that abortion should be given away like popsicles out of an ice cream truck. Most people also don't think that every single meeting needs to be segregated by race, but the DNC will begin with the following events at 9 a.m. You can see the list there. The Black Caucus meeting, the Hispanic Caucus meeting, the AAPI Caucus meeting, the Native American Caucus meeting, and the Ethnic Council meeting. There's no white meeting there, needless to say. Democrats are radically deranged on all of these issues. They can barely hide it most of the time. When a bunch of them gather together, there's no hiding it. Somebody's bound to show up with a baby-killing van and a giant IUD monument, or dressed up as an abortion pill or something similar. For several years now, Democrats have cultivated a party of activists who are both unhinged and entitled, who expect to be coddled even as their demands become more detached from reality. And this week, as the Democratic National Convention begins in a boarded-up Chicago, the entire country will be able to see that. And if it wasn't dead in the water already, the honeymoon for Kamala Harris's candidacy will officially be over. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. Grand Canyon University is a private Christian university located in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. GCU believes that our Creator has endowed us with certain unalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They believe in equal opportunities and that the American dream is driven by purpose. GCU equips you to serve others in ways that promote your flourishing, which will create a ripple effect of transformation for years to come. Whether you're pursuing a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, Grand Canyon University's online, on-campus, and hybrid learning environments are designed to help you achieve your degree. GCU has over 330 academic programs. As of September 2023, GCU will meet you where you are and provide a path to help you fulfill your unique academic, personal, and professional goals. Find your purpose today at Grand Canyon University, private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu. That's gcu.edu. Okay, well, one other clip from the DNC that I wanted to play very quickly. I'd be remiss if I didn't play this for you. In fact, I think I should do you the favor of playing it for you. Things got a little bit intense there at the beginning of the show, and so I think this is a nice opportunity for a little musical interlude. And the protest at the DNC last night apparently ended with a great musical number, and let's listen to that. Okay. Wow. Beautiful. Yeah. Well, beautiful except for the fact that that guy clearly doesn't know how to play the banjo, like at all. At all. What kind of person pretends to play the banjo when they can't? What kind of person pretends they know how to play the banjo when really they don't know how to play it? What kind of person makes a big show of knowing how to play the banjo when really they have no idea at all? I can't imagine what kind of person does that. Only a horrible person. Only the worst kind of person would ever do that, ever. Other than that, I thought it was just a tremendous performance. And they have the masks on and everything, which makes it gives the vocals that kind of muffled sound, which is nice. You've got the guy with the flute there, the guy with the, I don't know what that is, like a baby's rattler. Wonderful stuff, and I think we can expect many more scenes like this from the DNC convention as it continues. And remember that if you're a conservative, you're the weird one, not the guy with a mask on playing the flute. All right, the Kamala campaign has been experimenting the last couple of days, ever so gingerly, ever so cautiously, with letting Kamala speak off script. And it has not gone well. So here she is in Pennsylvania, no prompter, doesn't appear to be any written speech. And so she's kind of on her own, trying to explain something.
And that's what our election is about. Our election is about understanding the importance of this beautiful country of ours in terms of what we stand for around the globe as a democracy. As a democracy, we know there's a duality to the nature of democracy. On the one hand, incredible strength when it is intact. What it does for its people to protect and defend their rights, their liberty, and their freedom. Incredibly strong and incredibly fragile.
Now let's review the transcript here. Our election is about understanding the importance of this beautiful country of ours in terms of what we stand for around the globe as a democracy. As a democracy, we know there's a duality to the nature of democracy. On the one hand, incredible strength when it's intact, what it does for its people to protect and defend their rights, incredibly strong and incredibly fragile. Now, before we get to the substance, such as it is, We have to say that Kamala, she could improve her public speaking skills by like 65.5% approximately if she simply cut out 5 words from every sentence. So like this sentence. Our election is about understanding the importance of this beautiful country of ours in terms of what we stand for around the globe as a democracy. Actually, there are a lot more than 5 words to lose there. Because what you're trying to say, to the extent that you're trying to say anything at all, what you're trying to say is that this election is about the importance of democracy. So just say that. You can lose the words is about understanding. And then also this beautiful country of ours in terms of what we stand for around the globe. Lose all that. And you're left with this election is about the importance of democracy. Just say that. And then you're done that sentence. Move on to the next one. You finished this, you conquered a sentence. Well done. Now you can move to the next one. Why wouldn't you just do that? Well, one of the reasons she doesn't do that is because she has no idea what she's going to say next when she's off script. She doesn't, while she's saying a sentence, she doesn't know what the next sentence is going to be. She's like I don't know, it's like imagine if a goldfish could speak. And a goldfish has a memory that lasts about 2 seconds. And so how would they be able to string together a coherent paragraph? They can't because they don't remember, they don't know what's coming next. They don't remember what they just said. And so she's a little bit like that, and she has no idea what's coming next. And so every sentence, she's just stalling. She doesn't want the sentence to end. She just adds more words and words to it. Terrified. She's terrified of punctuation at the end. She doesn't want any kind of punctuation. She wants to keep going so she doesn't have to go to the next sentence. So I think that's what she's doing. But this election is about the importance of democracy. She could have just said that. Now, don't get me wrong. That is barely a coherent thought in and of itself. I mean, saying this election is about the importance of democracy, it's like saying that if you go to the doctor and someone says, well, what are you going to the doctor for? And you say, well, going to the doctor, it's about the importance of medicine. Now, in the broad sense, that's true, but it's so broad that it doesn't need to be said. It doesn't answer the question. Like, what matters are the specifics of the treatments that you need for whatever your specific ailment is that you're suffering from. And it's the same thing with democracy. The election is about, that's what democracy is. So it can't be about itself. Also, she says that democracy is strong, but also fragile, which makes no sense. It can't be both. Which is it, strong or fragile? And that's an interesting question. You could have a debate about which one of those is the correct answer. And she says it's both. It can't be both. The thing cannot be strong and fragile at the same time. She obviously thinks that it's very fragile. And Democrats in general think that democracy is very fragile, which is why they think that, a bunch of people trespassing in the Capitol on January 6th were just inches away from destroying democracy completely. It's why they think that electing Trump will be the end of democracy. I mean, they see democracy as this incredibly fragile thing that is not able to withstand anything. And if you make a wrong move, it'll be destroyed. So that raises the question of, well, if democracy is really that fragile and that brittle and easily broken, then what's so great about it to begin with? That's a question that you would ask. But having Kamala speak off script is just one way of attempting to humanize her. The campaign has rolled out another strategy to help humanize her in the last few days. And this strategy involves Doritos. So over the weekend, during a campaign stop, they staged this very odd performance where Kamala went to a gas station looking for Doritos, and they had both her husband and Tim Walz find Doritos for her. It's very weird. Speaking of weird, here it is.
Doritos. Ah, Dougie, there they are. Yeah. Thank you.
I know you want those.
Is it corn nuts over there, Tim? Yeah,
that's the big. There you go. That's funny. You see corn nuts over there?
Now, well, she's just like us. She eats Doritos. She's just like us. I think I'll vote for her because she eats Doritos. That's all I needed, really. That's what pushes me over the edge personally. Except that who the hell actually eats Doritos? Like, I thought this whole time that Doritos were on sale as some kind of long-running gag, some kind of practical joke. I thought they were just, people actually buy those and eat them on purpose. Doritos taste like crunchy vomit. They taste like you scraped vomit off of the floor of the bathroom. Little vomit chips. That's what they taste like. And yet they're so desperate to make Kamala seem human that they're putting her love for Doritos front and center. Make sure the camera's around while she goes looking for Doritos. Unless you, and if you think I'm being too cynical by assuming that the Doritos thing was like staged and scripted, well, it's not just this. Like, they're really leaning into Doritos as a thing for Kamala. Here's Kyle Becker, a journalist on Twitter. Here's what he posted. He reports, on Friday, a Harris campaign social media intern posted an awkward fundraising email that sprinkled Doritos throughout. Quote, do you remember how you felt the day after Donald Trump was elected? I do. It was election night for me as well. It was incredibly bittersweet. When I took the stage for my acceptance speech to represent California in the Senate, I tore up my notes. I just said, we will fight. Then I went home and I sat on the couch with a family-sized bag of nacho Doritos. I did not share one chip with anyone, not even Doug. I just watched the TV with utter shock and dismay. Two things are true 8 years later. I still love Doritos, and we still have not stopped fighting. So they're incorporating the Doritos thing into fundraising emails now. I don't know. They did some kind of internal polling and have been led to believe that Doritos, that really humanizes her. So they're just making Doritos a thing. We'll see if it works. Maybe that's what'll push her over the edge. We'll see. Here's Tim Walz. This is another interesting clip. Trying to explain how a Kamala presidency will not only, fix the country, fix all the things that the Biden administration and Kamala Harris have already broken, but it will also heal the rifts in your own family somehow. Let's find out how.
Some of us who have less hair and are old enough can remember when you could go to Thanksgiving, watch a Steelers game with your relatives, and not complain about politics the whole time, not be on each other's neck. Because you shared a commitment to democracy, a commitment to personal freedom, a commitment to public education, a commitment to infrastructure. We don't call each other names. We don't do it. And we don't use the least fortunate amongst us as punchlines for our jokes because they're our neighbors. They're our neighbors. And so you're getting an opportunity to see the best side of America. And for the young people here, they maybe haven't seen a campaign like this because of COVID, because of the things that's happening. This is a chance to bring out that joy, turn the page, and look to the future.
They haven't seen a campaign like this. So then even the last campaign that Kamala Harris was a part of also wasn't this. But, I remember what Tim Walz was talking about. I remember when my family would all sit around the Thanksgiving table talking about our commitment to infrastructure. That's a normal thing that families discuss, isn't it? We would just sit around gabbing about infrastructure. Infrastructure is really what brought us together. It was it was the thing that held the family. It was the glue that bound us together as a family. It was our commitment to infrastructure, which is what Tim Walz just claimed. Families used to be bonded by their commitment to infrastructure. I'll never forget. I think it was the Thanksgiving of '98 when I was a kid, and we had a 6-hour debate about what's the best bridge. It was a big bridge debate. And we debated bridges for hours and hours. And you know something? Tim is right. The debate got a little bit intense because we take infrastructure really seriously, like all families do. We didn't insult each other, though, and we remained respectful because we all knew that what really mattered was the infrastructure. We always kept that in mind. We wouldn't say or do anything that would bring disgrace or anything negative to infrastructure. That's what our family was like. And Tim Walz obviously understands the American family very well. At least that's what we're supposed to think, I guess. But of course, in reality, I have no idea what he's talking about. I'm not sure what a commitment to infrastructure even means. Like in your day-to-day life, what are you supposed to be doing to demonstrate your commitment to infrastructure? I like infrastructure. I'd rather have it than not have it. Am I committed to it? I guess. I don't know. What am I drive over a bridge. I drive on the road. I like that it's there. What am I supposed to be doing for it? The same for democracy. It says the average family is bound together by their commitment to democracy. What does it mean for the average person on a daily basis to be committed to democracy? Like, what does any of that mean? And worst of all, Tim claims that until recently, families didn't argue about politics. All families are different. My family has always argued about politics. What else is there to talk about when the family comes together? Okay, well, there's like 3 or 4 things to talk about when you're with your family, and politics is on the list. I don't think I'd ever want to go to a Thanksgiving where they don't talk about politics. That sounds boring as hell. But this is Tim Walz. I mean, this is the best they can do for a relatable guy. And he tells a story of family Thanksgiving that is just bears no resemblance to what anyone's Thanksgiving is actually like. And all of that leaving aside the fact that this is the same guy who, when he was governor of Minnesota, banned families from getting together for Thanksgiving and set up a snitch line so that if you found out that another family was getting together for Thanksgiving, you could report them to the police. So, that's how committed this guy is to making sure that people can have their Thanksgiving dinners together as a family. All right, ABC News has this headline. News outlets were leaked insider material from the Trump campaign. They chose not to print it. Article says, at least 3 news outlets were leaked confidential material from inside the Donald Trump campaign, including its report vetting J.D. Vance as a vice presidential candidate. So far, each has refused to reveal any details about what they received. Instead, Politico, the New York Times, and the Washington Post have written about a potential hack of the campaign and described what they had in broad terms. Their decision stands in marked contrast to the 2016 presidential campaign when a Russian hack exposed emails to and from Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, John Podesta. The website WikiLeaks published a trove of these embarrassing missives, and mainstream news organizations covered them avidly. Politico wrote over the weekend about receiving emails starting July 22nd from a person identified as Robert that included a 271-page campaign document about Vance and a partial vetting report on Senator Marco Rubio, who was also considered as a potential vice president. Both Politico and the Post said that 2 people had independently confirmed that the documents were authentic. But they're not going to publish them. So let me see if I can translate here what we're actually reading. Somebody hacked the Trump campaign's emails. They sent the emails to every major media outlet, and none of them published it because nothing in the emails was damaging to Trump. The emails were not embarrassing, and if anything, they made him look good because they aren't embarrassing, and so they didn't publish it. Like, that's the story here. That's what's actually going on. I don't think I have to explain or, defend the idea that if there was anything remotely scandalous or embarrassing for Trump, every news outlet would publish it immediately. They would be fighting with each other to be the first to publish it. Okay, there would be a piranha feeding frenzy over this stuff if there was anything remotely embarrassing in it. But there wasn't, which is why they didn't publish it. That's the actual reason. It tells you something about J.D. Vance. Right, as much as we're told that J.D. Vance is weird and he's got this long, strange history, well, apparently the news media got their hands on a 200-plus page vetting report about J.D. Vance. This is obviously an internal document, at least it was supposed to be, that would lay out every negative aspect of J.D. Vance's life is in that document, because that's what a vetting document is meant to do. I mean, that's the point of it, especially if you're about to select somebody as vice president. So this is 200 pages, ripping his life apart. And they didn't publish it because in reality, there's nothing in it. It's like there's nothing in it. It's just all it would prove. If they were to publish that 200 plus page vetting report on J.D. Vance, all they would prove is that J.D. Vance is an aggressively normal guy. And I can guarantee you that all the rest of the emails were the same thing. It just kind of proves that there's nothing scandalous happening behind the scenes in the Trump campaign. As I've said many times before, you could make the argument, I think very credibly at this point, that Trump is the least corrupt president in the history of the country. It's amazing how non-corrupt Trump actually is. You kind of think that for any politician at a certain level, there's at least some element of corruption that sneaks in. You would sort of assume that. But for Trump, there's just nothing there. And the way we know that is because they have torn his life apart. They have looked for everything they can possibly find. He's been hacked, he's been subpoenaed, he's been criminally prosecuted, everything. They've spent the last almost 10 years now searching for every last morsel, anything they can find on this guy. And every single time without fail, when they claim that, oh, we finally got it, we got the smoking gun, here it is, here's the proof that Donald Trump is a corrupt crook. Every time they claim that and they present it to us, we look at it and everyone goes, oh, that's it? Really? That's it? That's the best you got? And it would, they weren't going to make the same mistake again. If this was 4 or 5 years ago and the media got all those hacked emails, they would have published all of them. They would have talked it up. They would have said that they have proof that Trump is corrupt and all these things. And then they would have published them. And we would have all looked at it and said, that's it? Really? And I think they're starting to realize that now. So instead, they just let this go and aren't going to publish it. So it's either that reason or they really are they're really just trying to respect Donald Trump's privacy. That could be the other reason. All right, let's get to the comment section.
If you're a man, it's required that you grow a beard. Hey, we're the sweet baby gang.
It's far too easy to put something important off because I just don't have the time or patience to deal with it, like going to the DMV. But sitting here talking on today's cultural and political issues has taken at least a decade off my life, which is why it's so important to stop putting off finding the perfect life insurance policy. Policy Genius makes choosing the right policy for your family easy and quick. As the country's leading online insurance marketplace, Policy Genius gives you peace of mind knowing that if something were to happen to you, your family could cover their expenses while getting back on their feet. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius has licensed, award-winning agents and technology that makes it easy to compare life insurance quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find the lowest price. Their team of licensed experts is on hand to help you through the process. Even if you already have a life insurance policy through work, it may not be enough protection for your family, and it may not follow you if you leave your job. Policy Genius works for you, not the insurance companies. That means they don't have the incentive to recommend one insurer over another. Don't put off life insurance. Make it easy with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/Walsh or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/Walsh. Well, we're resurrecting the comment section, bringing the segment back from the dead. This is the comment section 2.0, totally revamped version. And it'll be exactly like the older version. It's just that we're doing it now rather than before. So everything else is exactly the same. It's very exciting. We'll start with some comments responding to the video that we posted on our YouTube channel on Saturday. And that was the conversation we had about the regretful parents subreddit. I'm not going to rehash that whole conversation. You can go back and watch that video and see it. This is a forum for parents who, as the name suggests, regret having kids. And it's very dark, often quite vile and horrifying, the things that people post in this forum. Many of these parents, not all of them, but many of them openly hate their own children, say so. They say so in the forum. And I gave my take on all that. I gave my advice to these parents, which again, you can go watch that video and see it. But there was one theme that emerged in some of the comments that I wanted to respond to. So let me read a few of these. Jane says, why is it so hard for people to admit that parenthood just isn't for everyone? Not everybody's cut out for it, and the earlier you see that in yourself, the better. Why force yourself to be a parent when the best you're capable of is mediocrity? Spare the world another parent and another unhappy child. There are plenty of ways to contribute to society other than adding to its population. Parenthood isn't the only selfless pursuit. Find other ways to do good if raising another human isn't for you. Baronello says, this is why I don't call people who don't want children selfish, because we don't need those people being parents. They likely never wanted kids, but went with it anyway. If someone tells you, I don't want kids, support that, full stop. Arishi says, no, Matt, people with that level of regret should not have children in the first place. They're honest. They don't fit a parent role. Some people should stay away from procreation, and it's not a dig at them. They're probably amazing people. The world would be nicer and safer if we stopped forcing everyone to have kids. If you don't feel like being a parent, you would probably suck being one. Don't bother. Okay. So a couple of things. Number one, many of the people that I addressed in that segment are definitely not amazing people. Okay. If you are saying that you hate your 5-year-old daughter, for example, you're not an amazing person. You're a bad person. You're a very bad person, actually. And now you don't have to stay a bad person forever, but you are right now. And so these are not amazing people. That's the first thing. Second, nobody is forcing anyone to be a parent. I think we just went over this. I don't want to force you to procreate. I don't want to force you to be a parent. I've never advocated that. So there's no force here, okay? But I do promote parenthood and family life as a positive good, because it is. And it's not as simple as saying, well, if someone says they don't want kids, then they shouldn't have kids and, they'll be unhappy when they have kids. That's just not true in so many cases. It was not true in my case. When I was in my early 20s, I didn't want kids. Now, I wasn't married at the time, but I didn't, I hadn't ruled out the idea completely at that point, but when I was 23, 24 years old, I didn't have any real deep-seated desire to be a father. And even when I got married, I knew we were going to be open to life, and I knew that we would have kids. But when I first got married, I felt a lot of things about the possibility of being a father, and it was a lot of trepidation and fear and all that kind of stuff. It's all very normal. And then I had kids, and it's the greatest thing I've done in my life. It's a source of great joy and fulfillment and purpose and all that stuff. So my point is that just because someone says they don't want kids or they don't think that they'd make a good parent, that's like everyone thinks that. I mean, everyone at some point thinks that, especially before they have kids. And so if we're going to say that all those people shouldn't then have kids, well, then I guess we're, embracing the extinction of the human race? Because that means that nobody would have them. And finally, I have a real problem with hearing these stories about regretful parents and concluding that the lesson here is that some people aren't meant to be parents. And my problem with it is that it's a total cop-out. It's a total cop-out. You are giving these people an excuse to be unbelievably selfish, miserable assholes to their kids. You're giving them an excuse. You're saying, oh, well, you weren't meant to be a parent. It's like if you lived in a neighborhood and you were an over-the-top, obnoxious neighbor to everybody in your community, like making the community miserable, doing everything possible to be unpleasant and awful to everybody around you. and then somebody called you on it, and you said, hey, man, I'm just not cut out to be a neighbor. Not everyone's cut out to be a neighbor, man. I'm just not meant for it. Now, I get that being a neighbor and being a parent are two very different things, but the analogy is the same. It's like, no, you're perfectly capable. There are billions of people on the planet who live in neighborhoods and they're not a-holes to those around them. There's no reason why you can't be the same. Billions of people have been parents and have succeeded basically in parenting their kids. And what, you weren't meant? Oh, no, I'm just not meant for it. No, I'm just not. No, that is such a cop-out. And when you say that, if you say that one of these parents who's confessing to having these feelings about their kids, what are they supposed to do with that information? Oh, I guess I just wasn't meant for this. So then what? What next? What you're basically telling them is that it can't be improved. The situation can't be improved. They can never change their own attitude. They can never be a good parent because they just weren't meant to do this. It's total nonsense. What do you mean meant? Like, what do you mean not meant? What does that mean? It wasn't written in the stars for them to be parents? They weren't destined for it? Well, apparently they were. Look, some of these parents, there are like lizards and birds that are better parents than some of these people. And you think that can't be helped? They can't change that? We can't expect you to at least be a better parent than like a Komodo dragon would be? Total cop-out. I don't buy it. Sorry. The reality is, look, the truth is, most people are meant to be parents. How do I know that? That's nature. That's biology. Like, almost everyone on the planet is biologically wired to have kids. Almost everyone, not everyone, almost everyone. So that's nature. So when you have this weren't meant to be parents thing, what are you basing that on? Because no matter how you look at it, from a spiritual perspective or a scientific perspective, your position still makes no sense. From a spiritual perspective, I think clearly, if God gives you a child, then you were meant to be a parent. And from a biological, scientific perspective, same thing. From a purely scientific perspective, there is no meant to or meant not to. It's just like, what does nature do? Nature decides, and nature says that most of us are, in fact, meant to be parents. So that's why I don't like that claim. And again, but more importantly, that's an awful thing to say to these particular parents. Awful for their kids. Because what does a parent do with that? No, the message should be, you're a parent. You're obviously meant to be a parent because you are one. And you are perfectly capable of being a good parent. Billions of people have done this. Animals do it. You can do it. It's just that right now you don't want to because you're being a selfish asshole. And all you're doing is you're being a childish, selfish asshole. All you're doing is thinking about yourself. I don't want to do this. It's not fun. I'd rather do. You are capable of overcoming that. And if you're not overcoming it, it's because you don't want to. Being a parent can be an enormous challenge in many ways, but it's actually one of those things that almost everyone is capable of doing. And although it's a challenge and it's very hard in many ways, like it is that, but it's also very simple. It's actually much simpler than we make it out to be. And if you just are not totally obsessed with yourself and your own wants and desires every second of the freaking day, okay, if you could just not be that and be concerned about your own child's well-being, not just that they are fed and clothed and all that, but that they become good, happy people in the world. If you can just have those two things, not be enormously selfish all the time, and concerned about your child, if you have both of those things going for you, it'll turn out okay. Like, it'll be okay. You'll still make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. There's going to be things that your kids get mad at you for. You know, your kid still might end up in therapy later in life, like blaming you for this or that. Like, that might happen regardless. But if you have those things going for you, and you actually, and you are choosing to love your child. Now, for most people, the choice part of it is not that difficult. It shouldn't be. Like, choosing to love my kids, that's not a hard choice. I'm full of love for them all the time. But if you're one of these parents and you are emotionally having difficulty making that connection, well, I'm sorry about that. But love is still a choice. It's an act. It's a thing we do. And so if you love your child, actually love your child, and can get outside, can pull your head out of your own ass for at least a part of the day every day, get in that habit of it, it'll work out okay. And yeah, I think everyone is capable of that. I really do. And if you say that you're not, you're just giving yourself an excuse. Over the weekend, we got word from theaters nationwide that Am I Racist advance tickets are selling fast, but we're also hearing from people in cities across the country telling us their theater is not carrying Am I Racist yet. Well, if you haven't grabbed your advance tickets yet, you need to do that by heading to amiracist.com right now. I'm not exaggerating when I say that every single ticket sold today determines how many theaters will show this film on September 13th. Remember how we exposed the left's gender ideology madness in What is a Woman? Well, I've gone even deeper this time. I infiltrated the absurd world of DEI, and trust me, what I uncovered will have you laughing and fuming at the same time. The initial response has been incredible, but we can't slow down now. Go to amiracist.com and get your advance tickets now. Now let's get to our daily cancellation. On Friday, I shared a sneak peek of my new film, Am I Racist? Tickets are on sale right now at amiracist.com. In the scene, which you can find on my YouTube channel, you see the moment when I was kicked out of a support group for white people struggling with their white grief. What is white grief? Well, as someone who attended the workshop for more than an hour, I still don't know exactly. As best I could tell, it's the kind of grief that white people feel because of their privilege. We have white privilege, according to the doctrines of DEI anyway. And our recognition of our privilege might cause us grief. That's the basic idea. The film's all about my journey into anti-racism, a deeply personal journey, one where I must face myself and my whiteness and ask the titular question. So it made sense to begin a journey like that at a group like this. And as I shared on Friday, the session began quite well, in my opinion. I opened up, I shared my feelings. You'll see all that in the film. Eventually, I become quite emotional. I have to leave the room to go weep in the pre-designated cry rooms. White people are not allowed to cry openly, thereby burdening people of color with their white tears. That's one of the rules. And I obeyed the rules, went to the cry room to cry. But when I came back, the group had figured out who I was. And at that point, I was kicked out. That's the part of the that you see in the clip that I shared on Friday. I'm not going to play the full clip again here, but just for context, for the rest of this, here's the part, at least where I was identified by the people in the room. Here it is.
Know that like my physical safety and yours and everybody else's here is okay.
Why would your physical safety not be okay? Did I miss something?
I don't feel comfortable.
What? Can you guys catch me up to speed on what's going on here?
You don't need to be caught up. We're going to be silent.
Is it because I said I had 17 black friends? It might have been 15. It depends on how you count them.
I would really appreciate it if you left so that the people who actually want to be here and deserve to be here can get what they need.
I do want to be
Can
here.
you please leave?
I would like it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
Come with me.
Well,
Thank you.
I didn't consent to be touched.
I'm not offering to touch you. I'm offering to walk you out. Will you walk with me and I'll answer your questions?
Okay, I'll admit it. My name's not Steven. Maybe you already knew that. My name is Matt Walsh.
We know.
Okay, so then they kicked me out. You could also see in the clip a few moments later that the police were called. And I wasn't there when the police showed up. I had already absconded and fled the state, a fugitive on the run. But since I wasn't there, I have wondered what exactly these people told the police when the police showed up. I hadn't broken any laws. I hadn't assaulted or threatened anyone. So what would they say to the police? How would they convince the cops to come find me and arrest me? Like, on what charge? That's been my question ever since that day, and you might be wondering the same. Well, now we know, because on Sunday, Libs of TikTok released the police report that was filed after this incident, and it is just as delightful as you might expect, maybe even more so. The names are redacted, of course, but here's a choice passage. Quote, the participant told me that she even considered, along with the rabbi, ways that they could use a chair to break a window to escape. She said that she felt unsafe because her exit appeared to be blocked by members of the production crew and Walsh. Now, for the record, nobody was blocked from leaving at any point. It would have been entirely unnecessary to use a chair to break a window and escape. There was a door right there. Like, just walk out the door. And when I read this police report, I immediately thought of the final scene in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, where Chief, the big Indian guy, who you could call Chief in movies back then, this came out like in the 70s, he rips a sink out of the wall and busts through a window to escape. Except in that case, they were involuntarily committed into a mental hospital. Now, the people in this group, the one in the clip, may, you might argue, have certain similarities to the patients in an insane asylum, but the point is that they could have left at any time. Breaking the window would not be necessary. And would be a pretty clumsy way of escaping anyway. Like, most likely you'd have to bang the window multiple times with your chair before it breaks. And that just seems like a kind of a slow and inefficient way to get out. Most of all, it's a massive overreaction. Well, we'll return to that point in a moment, but first let's continue reading a little bit. It says, quote, the participant described Walsh as extreme and that he has radical shows. She said that when she mentioned Walsh to the Ramapo officers, one officer said that he was familiar and that he has a show. She told me that was concerning, and when I explained that there could be a number of reasons that an officer knows who Walsh may be, she didn't believe that to be the case and said the officer is a fan and that she cannot control what the officer does in his own time. Now, just her luck, I guess. She calls the cops, and the cop is a member of the Sweet Baby Gang. We're everywhere. You cannot escape us, even with a chair through the window. Now, actually, there's no indication that the cop actually is a fan. All he apparently said is that he knows who I am. Now, I'd like to think that I'm such a likable guy that to know who I am is to automatically be a fan, but something tells me that might not always be the case. In fact, my experience in that room says that that probably isn't always the case. But putting aside the issue of what podcast the police officer does or doesn't listen to, the critical point is that my mere presence in the room was enough to prompt someone to dial 911. This is obviously ironic because we can assume approximately 100% of the people sitting in that circle have in the past, or would if you asked them today, argue for defunding the police. These same sorts of people insist that we should stop calling the police entirely, or at least that we should stop calling the police for all kinds of emergencies that we usually call them for. They say that we should consult with social workers and mental health professionals and therapists for many of these situations. So why didn't anybody call a social worker? Why not a mental health professional? I was just in the cry room, bawling my eyes out, for God's sake. I could have used a therapist. Instead, they go right to calling the cops, which really tells you something. Now, I suppose they'd say that they had to call the cops in this case because, as the police report indicated, I made them feel unsafe. But how so? What did I do to cause those feelings? Again, I didn't threaten anyone. I didn't assault anyone. I didn't even raise my voice at any point. So how am I a threat to their safety? I asked that question when I was in the room with them and couldn't get an answer. That's because the answer is something they'll never actually say out loud. In fact, they might not even know the answer. They likely don't understand their own feelings. So I'll answer it for them. My presence is a threat to them because they don't like me. And they don't like the way that I challenge their worldview. And this causes uncomfortable feelings. And they draw no distinction between their feelings and their physical being. So to harm them emotionally is to harm them actually. It is to harm them physically. They are how they feel. They are their emotional states. This is how the leftist mind works. And we saw it on full display there. And you'll see much more of it in all of its disturbing hilarity if you watch my movie, Am I Racist, which you can buy tickets for by going to amiracist.com. In the meantime, as unsafe as it may make them feel, I must say that the people who called the cops on me that day are today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. Godspeed.
Republicans are Nazis. You cannot separate yourselves from the bad white people.
Growing up, I never thought much about race. It never really seemed to matter that much, at least not to me.
Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you
I'm
left.
trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
If I'm going to sort this out, I need to go deeper undercover.
They gon' say I'm racist.
Joining us now is Matt, certified DEI expert.
Here's my certification. And what you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you in this field. Is America inherently racist?
The word inherent is challenging there.
I want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument.
America is racist to its bones.
So inherently.
Yeah, this country is a piece of
White.
Folks,
White.
trash.
White supremacy.
White woman. White boy.
Is there a black person around? There's a black person right here. Does he not
They gon'
exist?
say I'm racist.
Hi, Robin.
Hi. What's your name?
I'm Matt.
Just had to ask who you are because you have to be careful.
Never be too careful.
They gon' say you racist.
Buy your tickets now. In theaters September 13th. Rated PG-13.